Hello, welcome to another episode of Embers of the Imperium Homebrew Character Creation. Today I want to talk about the yin. This is kind of an interesting one because I've split this into two types of yin. The blessed or blessed, I guess, and the untouched. All right, we'll start with looking at the untouched. So for the untouched, I largely used the clone template from the Genesis Core rulebook and just modified it a little bit. So a little history on the yin, in case you're unaware, is the yin they're all clones who originated from a man named Darian Van Haeg. And Darian Van Haeg had a wife, I believe her name was Moyen, and they had a couple of children who died of a plague called Grey Fire, which was ravaging humanity at that time. And so doing work on cloning was technically illegal, so he kind of hid out, I think, on Jupiter, or one of the moons of Jupiter, and kind of was secretly doing this until somebody outed him. And he escaped with his wife to another planet where he could continue his research. And at some point during their travels, they seem to have traveled with a religious organization. And the lore that I have found hasn't really gotten into the details of the religious tenets and beliefs that had belonged to that group, but somehow this seems to have rubbed off in the descendants of Darian Van Haeg, who kind of started a monastery on their home planet, which they called Darian after their source. So what happened is, yeah, so Darian had managed to clone the final egg. So his wife died of Grey Fire eventually. He was able to clone her last egg many times and fertilize it and produce a whole bunch of clones. I guess they're not technically clones of him. They're basically, they are him and his wife's genes, but they're all basically they started cloning each other using the same egg, or the same, or clones of this egg. But they've kind of got a religious element to themselves as well, and I think this must have come from the religious group that Darian had originally traveled with. But I don't know I don't know exactly what those beliefs and tenets are, and I think that could be a very interesting point of making a yin character, is kind of establishing in-game what types of tenets and beliefs they have. Could, I think, have a lot to do with the individual agenda and motivations you might have that I won't cover here because that could vary a lot depending on your tastes and what you want to do with your game. But what does seem clear is we're going to have a difference between the yin untouched and the yin blessed, and what that means is whether or not the Grey Fire disease has carried on through that clone. So some of them still get this Grey Fire disease, and it's no longer as fatal as it used to be, but it still is crippling to the body. So you can tell which ones are untouched and which ones are blessed just by looking at them, as shown in the artwork. So with the untouched, these are the ones that have not been ravaged by Grey Fire. And so these are usually the front of the yin, the ones that are going to serve as ambassadors, soldiers, things like that. So I've given them the normal human template of 2s across the board. They do have 11 plus brawn threshold for wounds and a 10 plus willpower threshold for strain. And then the abilities, going to the clone abilities in the book, they have a clone specialization. So they start with 2 ranks in 2 skills of your choice. You still can't go past 2 ranks during character creation, but you can put 2 in any 2 skills of your choice, career or not. And the clones also have a feature called Face in a Crowd. So 1 black die when using social skills on unfamiliar targets. To most people, the clones are all kind of look alike, and if they don't know which one they're dealing with, they're going to be a little bit hesitant to deal with you. But if the person so you get a black die in those social skills. But if the person you're talking to knows you specifically as a clone, or which one you are, then that doesn't apply. I also gave them the bonus 10 XP for their human heritage, so during character creation. So not a huge ton of skills, but they start fairly strongly. So character creation, you can give them a good specialized start on the game. And so the Yin Blessed are the ones who have been ravaged by Greyfire. I don't know what this does to them really, besides the appearance. But for game purposes, I'm basically assuming that this has weakened their body in some way, their physical body. But the Blessed are very highly revered amongst the Yin, and so my assumption is that they would have been trained and taught to be leaders. And so I've given them stats of 1s for brawn and agility, 2 for intellect and cunning, and 3 for willpower and presence, to kind of indicate, and I guess this is technically more of a background, but just to indicate that this is how they've been raised and brought up. So their wound threshold, they're quite a bit more fragile than the Untouched here with a 9, but they have a really high strain. A lot of focus is going to be on things like willpower and presence. I've started them off with 1 point in leadership, again because of the training they're getting to be the leaders among the Yin. I didn't give them the face in the crowd of the other clones, the Untouched, and that's because the Greyfire, the artwork seems to indicate they are quite distinguishable because of this. So instead of that, I've given them a couple other abilities here. Motivational Speaker. Once per encounter, make a simple leadership roll as an action. For each success, give 1 booster die to an ally to use on their next turn. And you could split this between multiple allies or give them all to a single ally. The idea being that they can use their turn. They're not necessarily great fighters, but they can use their turn to really bolster their allies for the first round. Ideal. Doesn't have to be the first round, but probably get a good start on a fight there. Born Leader, so they're starting with that 1 proficiency in leadership, and Iron Will, so anything that attacks the willpower will receive a black die. So this could include things like psionic abilities by the Nalu or the Mahakt, or any sort of fear effects. They'll be able, they'll be hampered because in my vision of the Yin Blessed, they have meditation techniques and a solid self-will that has been kind of ingrained into them. So I thought this was just kind of an interesting faction to cover because they kind of give you 2, I think, fairly distinct types of characters you could play. And I think that coming up with their religious tenets and beliefs and behaviors could potentially have an awful lot of flavor to it. So it could be a fun role-playing experience. And that's all I have for that. Once again, if you have any suggestions or comments, please let me know. There's a lot of room for improvement in how I'm doing these. And have a wonderful day.